I got this video sent to me. I haven't watched it yet. Let's take a look at it and tell me what y'all think.
If you listen to the people who have been alienly abducted, it's always like the aliens are always telling them, oh yeah, we're here to save humanity. Well, that's Jesus Christ's role, not aliens. We're here to basically usher in a new era. That's because the elites want to get away from, at least the demons want to get away from Christianity. Strip the veneer of the alien aspect of it off, that in point in fact what you're dealing with is they're just demons.
UFOs and aliens.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, what do you think about all of that?
Well, obviously, some of the UFOs can be explained by some of them by governmental experiments and things of that sort, which people are not necessarily used to. However, usually when you get into stuff like the abduction cases and things like that, I actually did a conference on this more recently where I parsed out 10 different ways in which if you actually look at like abduction scenarios, that in point in fact, those abduction scenarios, if you actually look at what the aliens are supposedly doing, is identical to the same things that demons do to people who are possessed. So if you strip the veneer of the alien aspect of it off, that in point in fact what you're dealing with is they're just demons. There's actually a book too, I don't know if you've heard about it, it's called Alien Intrusion by Gary Bates. And in that book, first of all, he debunks a lot of the sightings that people have actually, the footage and the things of that sort. It's a bit dated of a book, but in there he talks about the fact that, too, that people who are in these abduction situations will actually cry out to Jesus, and then boom, all of a sudden the abduction situation stops and they're sitting back in their bed or whatever the case actually is. So there's a lot of demonic stuff on that level. There's some that speculate, too, that some of the craft that we see moving in ways that are contrary to physical laws is also just a diabolic mirage, which they can cause. That type of stuff is extraordinarily rare because God doesn't usually permit it, but that can actually happen. So that's kind of just my general thoughts in relationship to it, that a lot of this stuff, not all of it, but a lot of this stuff is just diabolic in nature.
What does God say about it? Does God say that we are the only beings in the universe?
Well, I mean, ultimately, we don't have absolute certitude other than the fact of what we read in Genesis. So in the book of Genesis, the creation of life is actually restricted or seems to be focused here on Earth and nowhere else. My own basic observation is if you look at what NASA is doing in their studies and things like that, everywhere they look, they think, oh, we might have found life. We might have, and then they didn't, of course. And I think what we're discovering is that other than here, the universe is sterile. Now, in theory, God can do whatever he wants, but at least from a scriptural point of view, but then also even science, I think, is starting to prove it out too, is that we're getting to the point where we're starting to realize that this seems to be the only place that you're going to, that it seems to be the case. A lot of times too, the idea that there's life elsewhere is heavily rooted in the evolutionary hypothesis, because there's evolution here, there must be everywhere, even though their theories of evolution are not only just scientifically problematic, but just even theologically and philosophically problematic. But that all being said, that's where it's rooted in, I think.
With all I'm sure you've seen some of the Epstein stuff. Have you been following that at all?
A bit, from a distance, yeah.
That seems like some type of satanic ritualistic type stuff that was going on there.
Yes, actually. And actually, the stuff I've read about as far as to the degree that I can have certitude about what you can find on the internet, the stuff that was going on there, and just the layout of the island gives an indication that it was heavily involved in the occult. The other thing I should mention too is that people don't get heavy into that type of thing. It's the same thing that we've seen elsewhere, where guys who suffer from homosexuality and they're active and they're very heavily active, it very often degenerates into ritualistic sex. It's the same kind of a thing there, that it eventually degenerates. Satan ends up just driving them because they're so disordered that he gets involved, and then he drives it more towards a ritualistic kind of an approach. So if it wasn't ritualistic, I'd be surprised.
With it, there's just so many questions about what's going on, and it seems like nobody high up, nobody that could actually do something about this is going to. In fact, they're just trying to cover it up. In fact, our mutual friend who brought you here today, I mean, we've had a handful of discussions about distractions and all the distractions that are going to come to try to take our eye off of the satanic ritualistic abuse that Epstein did,
Right.
and all of his people that were involved with him.
Right.
And before any of this came out, our friend said, I think it'll be aliens. And then,
Yeah.
and then,
Then
and then we see former President Barack Obama go on some random podcast and say, "Oh yeah, aliens are real." And I brought this up. I've been really angry about this stuff, and I went up to our oak tree and did a little rant about it and said, you think this is a coincidence that they're all of a sudden former president goes on a random podcast that nobody's ever heard of and says that aliens are real, right in the middle of the biggest, most elite pedophile ring in the entire world, while that's being
blown up.
unfolded.
Right.
And then you fast forward about a week, and of course, then President Trump comes out and says something about, what President Obama did was illegal. He shouldn't be talking about aliens. I don't know the exact quote, but he came on and said that. And then I have former guests that have been on the show, some of them that I've been trying to get on the show that haven't come, that are in the alien UFO anonymous activity, realm, and they're saying, oh, look at this. Oh, look, maybe the Epstein stuff is a distraction from the alien UFO. And to me, that is no way. Like, right. I am not taking my eye off of that ball. Don't try to distract me with this bullshit. And I mean, what do you think about that?
I totally agree with you. Actually, for this particular reason, there's kind of a bit of a backstory. So one of the tactics that the demons always use is, and very often use, is they rarely do a frontal assault on a particular individual. What they'll do is, and this is a diversionary tactic, which being a military man, you would be able to appreciate this. You're over here, you just lob bombs over here, so that people's focus goes over here. And what that does is that gives you the ability to maintain your activity over here and maintain your influence. So the demons will very often, so for example, one of the things that we commonly see is it's a demon of fear that actually drives things like sins against the sixth commandment, pornography, and things of that sort. So you'll drive the person to do that. But the real root problem is a demon of fear. So once you address the demon of fear, then this stuff just clears out. Well, this same type of tactic is actually going on. They want you to not pay attention to what's really going on or what's really in the background, because that's where their vulnerability is, at least in the relationship to the diabolic. So it has that same kind of a complexion. So you've got this situation where the Epstein stuff starts to kind of come to the surface, and then all of a sudden there's this diversionary tactic that's used to get everybody, because now virtually nobody's talking about Epstein. So you just get that diversionary tactic over here, and as you know, the American people have, a lot of American people have the memory of a goldfish, which is like 11 seconds. So as soon as you've got them looking at this thing, now they're paying attention to this. And of course, the whole alien things, I think, is just a ruse anyway. It's just a way for people to get focused and interested on that. On the other hand, I wouldn't be a bit surprised if the world elite didn't want to use the alien things from the point of view of, if you listen to the people who have been alienly abducted, it's always like the aliens are always telling them, oh yeah, we're here to save humanity. Well, that's Jesus Christ's role, not aliens. We're here because human beings can't save themselves, and we're here to basically usher in a new era. Yeah, that's because the elites want to get away from or at least the demons want to get away from Christianity as the ruling ethos that affects, the world cultures, etc. So the very same things that the demons actually want is the same type of stuff that you hear the aliens actually talking about and going into. So for me, it just looks like a diabolic diversionary tactic, not necessarily in the sense that the people that are doing this diversionary tactic, the human beings doing this, are thinking that they're thinking in terms of diabolic necessarily in doing this. Nevertheless, that doesn't mean that the demons can't be using them precisely to that end, because the demons do not want people to become focused on the moral degeneracy, because then they'll start demanding change, and the demons don't want the change. They want this degeneracy because it empowers them.